Hey everyone, thank you for watching today. My name is Mark Kerpiel, and I'm a Customer Success Specialist here at Cisco, and I want to talk to you more about Splunk AppDynamics and help you get the most out of your product experience. Today we're going to do an intro to synthetic monitoring, and this is going to be a progressive series of videos released, and they will be added to a playlist to help our customers and partners get the most out of our product. So feel free to please check out the rest of our videos on any topic you might be interested in. Now, to get into the agenda for today, we're going to give you an overview of synthetics at an introductory level, cover some deployment options and best practices, and then we're going to go into a demo on our controller to see what this all looks like. And then we'll finish with some closing thoughts. So what is synthetic monitoring? Well, at a high level, synthetic monitoring is a type of end user monitoring where scheduled jobs are ran in a controlled environment, which is then used to test key application workflows, such as a user going through your front-end store and then checking out with an item. These key workflows are then measured for their correctness and performance, which is then visually reported on your AppDynamics controller. Now, when it comes to end user monitoring, there are two main types within AppDynamics, which are synthetic and then real user monitoring. Some of the benefits of synthetic monitoring is it helps proactively detect issues when there's no user traffic. Think nights, or maybe your application isn't used much on the weekends or weekdays. You can schedule your jobs to run whenever and then cover the monitoring during those off hours. And a good use case is we do a lot of our deployments at night, and it's to not affect users. In the same vein, synthetics can then be used to test our deployments before our real users get to it. Another use case is a lot of us have test environments that usually don't have much traffic. Synthetics can fix that and test in these low traffic environments. Now, for our synthetic jobs, we are the pilot, so the exact workflow is decided by us, including verifying specific elements. Let's say we want to make sure that our logo is actually loaded, and we're using the most recent JSON on each page, something that can be verified on synthetics, but is much more difficult when it comes to real user monitoring. Now, when it comes to troubleshooting, it's important to isolate issues, and we want to know factors such as different Chrome versions affecting our application, or maybe a browser that's affecting it versus Firefox versus Chrome, or maybe it's the type of device, whether it's mobile or a browser. With synthetics, we have a controlled test environment where we set those factors, and we're able to isolate our issues. In contrast with our real user monitoring, we are at the mercy of what our users are currently using, and it can be harder to find out which specifically is causing our issues because of that. Finally, although these are benefits over real user monitoring, it's important to not think of it as a use synthetics or use real user monitoring, but actually a reason to have both enabled so we can get a full picture of your end user experience. Now, there are two main types of synthetic monitoring on AppDynamics, the first being browser, which, by using scripts in Python with the Selenium library, we're able to simulate complex end-user workflows throughout your application, and then make customizations to our synthetic end-user environment, such as browser type or whether we want desktop or mobile view. And this is so we can replicate what our end user is experiencing and then monitor key aspects of our front-end application. And I'll show a little bit of this on the demo. Now, in addition to browser synthetic monitoring, we have API synthetic monitoring, where we can monitor the performance and availability of our HTTPS-based APIs. These can be public or private API endpoints, but for private, we would need to use the private agent more than likely on your own network to reach them. And instead of being Python-based like browser, API monitoring is instead built on JavaScript, and we do have three options when we're creating jobs. First, there's an easy-to-use GUI option, which makes it a no-code option for anyone that doesn't want to or doesn't have the knowledge to do so. Then we have the option to use our own custom JavaScript. And then finally, if you already have your API tests on Postman, we can import the collection directly into AppDynamics, and it will convert it for you, saving you a lot of time and effort. Now we have two deployment options when it comes to AppDynamics synthetic agents. Each will have its own license count, so please work that out with your account team. But for hosted synthetic agents, we at AppDynamics host locations across the globe, which is nice since it saves you the headache of setting up your own agents or doing any needed maintenance or upgrades while being able to test globally against your own application. The downside of this, however, is if you want to test internal sites, such as pre-production, you can't. Well, in contrast, we have our private synthetic agents, which allow you to have full control over your agent in your own environment, which makes it easy for security policies as well as gaining the ability to reach internal sites. Now, I personally recommend, if you're licensed, to take advantage of both of their benefits by using a combination of the two deployment options and then basing it on your synthetic job use case. Let's say we have a bunch of pre-production sites that we want to test. We can save our private agent location licenses for those. And then for our public sites, we can use our hosted agent locations. Now, some best practices that I've learned from working as a customer and with other customers that I've worked with is to first use logging to help troubleshoot issues. If a script breaks, logging allows us to tell whoever's debugging what's happened so far in the script and give them that important context. You also want to use assertions, such as verifying that we've returned the correct status code in API monitoring, or checking if a certain element exists for browser. And before we actually put our script onto AppDynamics, it's a great practice to test it locally and do your debugging in an IDE. For our passwords, AppDynamics has a secure credential vault that's essential to keeping everything secure. In your configuration, you also want to use multiple locations, browsers, and devices to be able to isolate issues and then cover all use cases. And browser synthetics also allows for screenshots to be taken at any time. This is important for us to understand what the user is seeing. And a great example is if we had a screenshot taken, if the script fails, we could see that there's something such as a maintenance screen, a pop-up, or just something that's out of place that's affecting our script. Finally, for browser, it's important to use unique IDs for web page elements. Long XPaths are unreliable, especially if the page changes ever so slightly. In contrast, using strong, unique identifiers such as unique IDs will work usually even if small changes are made to the website, and regardless of the view you choose for synthetics. Now, I started to cover the basics of synthetics, but before I go into a demo, I did want to show a great plan of action when creating our scripts, as I'm sure you're about to consider doing it for your first time. So first thing we want to do is plan by defining a set of goals for our scripts and what needs to be covered. A good example is looking at high traffic or unreliable APIs or web flows we have, and then creating scripts to cover those. Once we do, then we can optionally create those scripts locally to test and debug. I find that a lot easier to do in an IDE, such as the Visual Studio Code, rather than trying to debug on AppDynamics directly. Then we'll upload our script to AppDynamics and then verify everything looks correct by looking at our sessions. Finally, using the script metrics and events, we can create custom alerting and dashboarding to be proactive about our synthetic monitoring. Now to go into a demo on our controller, the first thing we're going to do is go into our demo application, our Intro to Synthetics demo. Now, if you see here on the EUM page, we actually have synthetic data showing up in the general dashboard. This is great when you're showing EUM and synthetic data together all in one place. Now, going into our synthetic jobs, here we have one browser application. The cool things we can see here is we have an average duration, an average availability, and we can see the trends of our availability and performance. Now, if we go to edit this job, let's see what we have here. So we name our script here, Demo for Browser Synthetics, and here we have a Selenium script. And some of the best practices that I talked about earlier are implemented here, right? So we have a logger.info, so we're logging each step. We have screenshots for successes, and then also for failures. And then this script is going to the selenium-base.io demo page, and then sending an input of this is a test. Another best practice that I talked about is selecting multiple locations. Here we're using hosted locations. from AppDynamics, and we're selecting multiple regions across the globe. This is just to see if we have specific issues across the globe and to get more input so we can factor in and isolate issues. Here you could also select hosted versus your private synthetic agents. Another thing you can do is set a schedule and add multiple schedules. So you can select days of the week based on time zones, betweens. So let's say you have guaranteed maintenance windows, or maybe you want to only run this script during off hours because you want to use EUM during on hours. You can do all this right here. We can select our browsers here. So we can select Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer. We can even do mobile and select the type of user agent. So here we have iPhone, Pixel, laptops, and an iPad there as well. Then you can select the exact height, width, and pixel ratio. We can select our connection speed, the timeout period, availability rules, and then we can set performance thresholds. Again, all of this is important as we want to use synthetics to isolate issues, and because it's in a guaranteed controlled environment, being able to control those factors is so important. And when we click into a synthetic session, we get all our sessions for what's been running for the last hour. So we're running this on a 15-minute schedule. So you'll see 4 jobs for an hour-long period. Here we can see which city they were run in, which country, which browser, if there were any errors, visual type, duration. And then we could filter. So let's say we only wanted to look for errors or specific time thresholds. We could do that from here. And we could even download it. And you can see it in the chart view too, which is really nice, especially when you're viewing hundreds of sessions here. We can help isolate issues, maybe by region, by browser, occurrence, specific jobs that are least available. And then when we click into a record, I want to show you some of those best practices put to work. So here we have our session last screenshot. So we can see exactly what the user is seeing. So you see that we inputted this is a test into this input field. And that's because because of the screenshot, we're able to see exactly what that looks like. Going to the script output, here we can see the logging that we're doing custom here. So we're navigating to the Selenium demo page and then inputting text. Another cool thing is we can do health rules based on the availability of our synthetics or any other metric. So for our case, we're doing affected entities as custom, and then we're selecting a synthetic job. So our synthetic job here, and we're doing availability. The important thing here, availability, and I'll show you in the metric browser, is out of 1,000,000. So if you see here, I'm checking that it's less than that 1,000,000 mark. But we also have other things such as billable time, job executions, OK sessions, pages per session, session duration, or session visual time. All of that you can use for custom health rules. Another thing we have is policies. So we have a few options here when it comes to synthetics. The main two are synthetic availability and performance. So we can, when I showed you the synthetic availability and performance thresholds earlier when creating the script, those events will trigger. And then if you have a policy tied to them, you can set alerting. So you see problem ended for synthetic availability, warning started, a bunch of factors, very similar to the APM side of the policies. Now I want to go to one more thing on the browser side before I go into it. On the API side, so again, on that metric browser, we'll go to end user experience, synthetic jobs, demo for browser, click availability, and you see here that it's out of 1,000,000. This is just the ratio that we're using, but some people get confused by it. So it's important to note when you're creating your health rules, or if you're doing a dashboarding and you want to understand what that means. The next thing we'll do is we're going to go back to user experience and then go to API monitoring. And then we're going to go into our job here. And here we have a dogs breed API. So this is just using a public API, and I'll show you the edit here. I actually used the GUI for here. So the GUI is super easy to use. We used get and set the URL. And then we did a response validation of 200. Now, if you go into here, we can see where those things are occurring. So we have this URL, dog CEO breeds list all, and then we're looking for our response and logging it. Again, logging is great practice here, so we can see the results. And again, this will look just like the other one. We selected multiple locations. Another best practice, set a good schedule, set up time periods, and then you can configure performance thresholds like that. And just like browser, we can click into here and see individual sessions. So if we look into an individual sessions, we can get API details. And then we also get our response details per API request. And then we also can view console logs. So it's important to set up good logging here as well, so we can help troubleshoot and isolate issues. I know I keep repeating that, but it is important practice. And the one thing I didn't cover on the browser side is we have an APIs page, and then on the browser side, that would just be pages. So you can actually isolate issues by pages or APIs and see if a specific page or API is having an issue, which is really nice for isolation again. Now to finish with some closing thoughts on our Intro to Synthetics session, today we were able to cover the basics of synthetics and the types available to you on AppDynamics with browser and API. Then we went into which app agent deployment options you have and then when to use them. We then covered some best practices and then how to get started on your synthetic journey. And finally, we went through a demo on your controller. I hope you got the most out of this session, and as always, please attend our other sessions or watch any of our other on-demand videos to get the most out of your AppDynamics experience. Thank you so much for watching our video. It does mean a lot to us. Please again check out the rest of our channel, and feel free to like and subscribe if you liked it, as we continue to release new content frequently.